I want to talk about a trio of young arms for the Mets. Sounds familiar. We heard that before. Shoot, how long was that? 10 years ago? It might have been longer than that, when some of those guys like Syndergaard, deGrom, Wheeler were coming up. Harvey. That was an era.
It was.
Turns out that this era might be even better with the whole package, with the owner, with everything they got going on at the same time. But let's start with Nolan McLean. 6'4", 215. They call him Cowboy Ohtani. Oklahoma State Cowboy, 24 years old, North Carolina born. Very interesting. There's two guys on this list that were double draftees for the Mets, but starting with the McLean story, probably the more traditional story, where he got drafted by another team, in this case the Orioles, 3rd round, gets drafted by the Mets the next year. Two-way guy, even played two-way for a little bit in the minors. I watched some of his stuff at the plate. I mean, extremely powerful. Just the body looks strong. He swings hard. He's a very physical player, which I know is a theme with some of these guys, something you always talk about. But just watching him play DH was impressive. And now see him as a pitcher, 6 pitches, fastball, sweeper, curve, cutter, splitter. The changeups he was throwing at the major league level kind of caught my attention. There you see a nice fastball, but he's got an arsenal, man. And he just, like to say, looks right. I think this guy definitely fits that category.
Looks right. And the double draft is really interesting. So the Mets, that to me tells me that scouting department has been chasing him and his profile for a while now, so that it's good. Okay, maybe you took a flyer on a guy as a draftee out of high school. He went on to go play at college, would go on to get selected again. So something interesting happening there. And then to have hey, we should have benefited from already liking this guy from our previous process, to then maybe let's make sure this one doesn't get past us, in the 3rd round is the 91st overall pick in 2023. So to me, really good total netting out of a potential top of the rotation starter. Yep. At least mid-rotation starters, what it looks like to me. And then with a name like Cowboy Ohtani, that's I wonder if that one will stick. But I think he's going to consistently be a pitcher from here on out. And I had an up-close view of Nick Martinez. We've talked about him a lot on the show. And I just had an up-close view of watching a really good athlete who was a two-way guy through most of his collegiate career, then be able to focus on pitching. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that. Peyton Tole, we just talked about last episode. I've seen when players are able to focus in on that full time and get the reps to do that, there's a big increase that could happen. That's like, oh, well, I didn't see that at draft time, but now here you are with top of the scale stuff, right? Because you do a redraft, he's getting taken very early in whatever we redraft. And I also think that this is one of those where I wonder how much is true scouting and how much is true analytics. Hopefully it's the bolstering of the both, because it's 3,000 RPM breaking ball and upshoot 4-seam fastball. We talked about it with Hunter Brown. We can talk about it here. And the separator, and the reason he reminds me of Nick Martinez, because you mentioned the changeup, right? Like that to me, that to me is the separator, between a starter and a reliever, the ability to develop the changeup. And if you're a two-way guy, more than likely, you're probably coming in relief a lot. When you're in relief, you're going more fastball slider, like 2-pitch mix as a reliever. As a starter, you don't get the chance to develop the whole arsenal. And that's where I kind of connected to Nick Martinez, because he was always able to have the changeup as the out pitch. He was able to stay on the right side of any matchup, any split. So if that's come along in addition to like a power slider and a good 4-seam fastball, that's starting pitcher impact right here. Like that's where it can really come together. And I think that's what we're seeing. And big physical athlete with repeatable delivery. It's probably what gets him to I can't seem to.
Well, while you're working that, I mean, the thing that caught my attention with a guy like this, and I only mention it because they say Cowboy Ohtani. Obviously, Ohtani is a legitimate two-way all-star player in the major league level that no one even on that planet. But one thing that I always thought was interesting about Ohtani is that you would think a two-way player would be more limited in his pitch mix, because there's only so many hours in a day. You got to worry about being a hitter. Then you got to worry about having a pitch mix. Maybe you keep it simple. But Ohtani throws up to 7 pitchers.
Yeah.
You look at McLean, fastball, sweeper, curveball, changeup, cutter, splitter. So even though he was, I guess, having more limited reps, and you see it right there. Look at that chart. I mean, he's throwing everything.
Yep.
So even though he was limited in his reps as a pitcher throughout his career until recently, he still developed a pretty wide repertoire.
Yeah. And to me, I don't know what he does or what he did in the off season, right? I'm sure in order to throw this many pitches with this much pitchability and actually be able to use them, your off season needs to look a certain way. It's hard enough to get command 2 pitches right. So to have full usage of your arsenal, to me, there's a real pitchability here, but also I would connect that to what I bet would be like a pretty aggressive, intense off-season plan. Again, I'm going to connect it to personal in terms of like Nick Martinez. Like, I see what that entails. Like for you to be trying new grips with a changeup or a sweeper or a sinker and a four-seamer, like that, all that work happens in the off-season as a starting pitcher. So I'm like, it's the only way you can get there. And you got to throw enough strikes with everything to prove that those are pitches you can throw. He seems like a true any pitch, any count kind of guy with good underlying data and high powered like RPMs to the breaking ball. And then you look at the slide of the sweeper and it's like, and that's big, powerful. It shouldn't look this polished for a two-way guy, but maybe the better pitcher was always just kind of being suppressed a little bit by how much time you have to spend hitting.
Wasn't Nick Martinez a two-way guy at some point? Did that stop when he got to college, or was he able to go both in college?
He was a position player into college who had a good arm and it was a really good athlete, and the team wasn't like some elite level team, so he made sense in a lot of 7th inning, 8th inning, even closer eventually. But he would play second most of the game and come in and close. But he was a position player that then made the transition because of really strong characteristics as a pitcher when he did it. But sometimes you don't get the chance to show it, right? Like in a college program, we talked about this with Peyton Tolle. If you're a good bat in a lineup and you also pitch, your team needs you to hit and provide offense as well. So, but I think he made the right choice here. I think he's going to be doing this in particular for a long time.
No, I think so. And we talk a lot about physicality. We still have more of that to go because we get to the Marlins where it's really kind of front and center. But a different type of profile here with Jonah Tong, 6'1", 180, 22 years old. Yeah, I kind of previewed at the top of the show that we'd be talking about cold weather pitchers, right? North-south. We mentioned that with Hunter Brown from Michigan, north-south pitcher. Jonah Tong from Ontario, Canada, obviously not that far from Michigan. 6'1", 180. I'm not sure he's even that. The Tim Lincecum comparison, I mean, you mentioned it, and seeing how they finish, not just their size, but look at the leg kind of kicking up in the air where it's almost horizontal or it's almost vertical. Pretty cool visual there, just knowing how good Tim Lincecum was in his prime. But fastball rises 97, mid-70s curve, over the top release, 20 inches plus of induced vertical break on that four-seam fastball. Led the minors with 179 Ks. Again, we mentioned native Canadian, went to Georgia as a senior, 7th round pick, but has really developed. Unusual profile. We were talking about the Vulcan change before the show. That's something he employs as well. So what do you see with this guy?
First, I see the Mets are scary because they have money and they have good process now. And I think they've had pockets where they've had good process as well. They've been developing good players for a while, but to see 3 amateur scouting graduations into your major league lineup on the
0 first-round picks,
right? On the heels of, they have other story, Alonso, Vientos. Like, this is an extended story, but right now, I'm seeing the Mets do a lot of things in terms of the player development and player showing up to the big leagues and being good is very difficult as a player development system. It's not the norm for guys to show up and just be very good when they arrive here. And I think that they've done a nice job in terms of like these guys get there and they look like they're big leaguers and they're performing. And I think that at least on the pitching front, this is what developing young starting pitchers with upside is what you want. I'm going to stop short in terms of like Lincecum was a generational kind of once in a generation pitcher, multiple Cy Young winner. So he needs to do a lot before I can give him that. I can see
just the finish.
And he had a cleaner delivery. There's Jonah Tong's delivery it's a good solid delivery, but Tim Lincecum had like a generational. It was studied in terms of like the length of his stride and the deception, and the Lincecum to me is in his own pitching category.
That's about foot staring in the sky kind of thing. That's the finish of it with the legs. That's the one thing that I don't know, kind of brings it up a little bit.
And there's a little bit of like a dunk or a head whack toward the end, so it's a little non-traditional. I don't know. Sometimes that adds to the deception of it. But what's clear is that the Mets chase high-riding four-seam fastballs in the draft or in their development system. So they've been pretty effective in developing that, and also like hunting that clearly in the draft. Because here we just talked about two guys with vertical profiles to the fastball.
Another right-hander, different body type, 6'2", 210 righty, Brandon Sproat. Sprout or Sproat? Sproat
is how it was mentioned. I remember him being discussed in the draft rooms.
So out of Pensacola, Florida. This is a guy that just watching him, I didn't really know anything about him really until he started doing stuff like this. As you see, Sal Stewart, another guy we'll talk about here in a second, but really, really hard thrower. He's got breaking ball with the slider. He's got a change up. Interesting story. So the Mets actually drafted him twice. He was a slot, but the Mets drafted him twice.
Okay.
So this was not another team drafting the player and the player didn't sign. The Mets drafted him as a second rounder in 2023. He was a third rounder the year before that they couldn't sign. So they stayed with him and got him again. Their persistence was rewarded here with the player. I don't know how that works with the rules. If you draft the same player twice, I guess it doesn't make a difference in terms of what you get back. But man, pretty electric. Of all these three, does he have the most electric, just pure stuff?
This is the one to me. If I evaluated all three, still McLean is kind of hard to. What I know about him is a lot. It's too much. But this to me checks the box more as I like this delivery. A little bit of a longer arm swing. You can talk about that, but not problematic enough for you to. If you think Yuri Perez has a long arm swing, but I don't know. Really. This is probably my favorite delivery of the three. So if there's velocity and strike throwing ability there, and chances are he's probably got a good, he's more of a sinker, kind of 27% sinker, 13% four seam. So this is more of a getting under the barrel. But he's missing a lot of barrels so far in this small sample. It's what you would want to have, three early 20s starting pitchers that all look the part, as you also have money to spend in free agency. So I think the Mets are here to stay for a while at or near the top of this division. So the Phillies are good too. Braves aren't sleeping for a long time like that. I think this is an ice bath for the Braves this year. I think you'll see them coming back with a vengeance, but Mets, and then shout out to David Stearns and the rest of his front office, right? Like they're, and you got to feel good in terms of the Brewers are very good too. And the Brewers, that's a David Stearns established system. So like the Brewers being in very good shape, and also the Mets being near the top of the division, the credit where credit is due. Like there's some good things happening in terms of processes. And